The galaxy was silent. Stars flickered like distant candles, but in the darkness between them there was emptiness, cold and endless. Somewhere far from the bustling planets and busy trade routes, a starship floated alone. Its hull was battered and scarred, a remnant of battles long forgotten. Broken thrusters hung like dead limbs, and tiny meteoroids had left dents that no repair crew had touched in decades. To most, it was nothing more than space debris, a lost relic drifting in the void. Yet the ship was not completely dead. Inside its circuits, faint pulses stirred like the trembling heartbeat of a creature barely alive. Strange lights flickered in its control panels. Warnings and data streams glitched in patterns almost like a cry. The galaxy had abandoned this vessel. But the ship remembered its purpose. It remembered war, it remembered loyalty, and it remembered the ones who had commanded it. And somehow, in its own way, it wanted to live again. On a distant, worn-out mining station orbiting a dying planet, Ryland Kane wiped his hands on a greasy cloth and leaned over a scratched data pad. He was just a mechanic, nothing more, nothing less. His job was to fix broken engines, mend worn circuits, and sometimes repair the ships that others had given up on. Ryland wasn't famous, and he didn't have any titles or fleets under his command. But humans had a way of seeing possibilities where others saw failure. They had stubbornness, courage, and curiosity, the kind that made legends out of ordinary people. And now Ryland's curiosity had caught something strange. A signal, faint and fractured, pulsed through his comms. It was unlike anything he had seen before. Part static, part rhythmic pulse, almost like a heartbeat calling out through the void. Most beings in the galaxy would have ignored it, written it off as interference or a ghost signal. But humans were different. Ryland felt it in his chest, a tugging, an urgent plea. He traced the signal across star maps, past asteroid fields, past abandoned stations, until it led him to the derelict starship. The ship floated silently near a collapsing star, its metal body glinting faintly in the dying light. Its presence was imposing, but there was a sadness to it, a quiet dignity. Ryland stared at it, feeling a strange connection he could not explain. "You're still alive," he whispered. "I can hear you," the ship seemed to respond. Panels glimmered faintly. Sparks jumped along old wires. A soft electronic murmur echoed through the hull, almost like a sigh of relief. It had waited decades, alone in the emptiness, hoping someone would come. And now a human was there, willing to see its worth. Ryland did not hesitate. He suited up and boarded the ship, stepping carefully over twisted metal and fallen debris. The air was stale, heavy with dust and the ghosts of old battles. Lights flickered, systems sparked and groaned, but the ship seemed to sense his presence. It shivered as he walked through the corridors, as if greeting him for the first time in years. Hours turned into days as Ryland explored every corner, every broken control panel. He discovered fragments of the ship's AI, long dormant, buried beneath decades of neglect. Bits of its memory survived, flickering and fragmentary, trying desperately to communicate. "Help, awake." Alive, by the signals seemed to say, broken and uncertain, yet full of emotion. Ryland's hands trembled. He had fixed many machines before, but this was different. This was alive in its own way, and it was calling to him, trusting him to understand. He set up his tools, carefully reconnecting circuits, replacing broken conduits, and patching holes in the hull. Each repair was a conversation, a gesture of care. Ryland whispered to the ship as he worked, as if coaxing it back to life. "I won't leave you here. Not anymore." The ship seemed to hum in response, tiny vibrations running through the floor beneath his boots. It was a connection that no alien engineers could have understood, a bond between human and machine, one forged in trust and hope. Outside, the stars continued to shine coldly. The galaxy had forgotten this place, but inside the starship there was warmth, a small spark of life flickering in the dark, and with every turn of his wrench, every careful repair, Ryland felt that spark grow stronger. Somewhere deep in the void, The abandoned starship had finally found a friend, and for the first time in decades it whispered a quiet promise to itself. It would live again. Ryland Kane did not sleep. He worked through the cold hours of the ship's empty corridors, his hands black with grease and his eyes strained from staring at flickering screens. Every panel he touched seemed to hum beneath his fingers, a faint vibration that pulsed like a heartbeat. The ship was alive in ways beyond his understanding, and it seemed to know he was there to help, not to harm. The AI at the core of the ship, fragmented and fractured, had started to stir. Lines of code, once frozen for decades, flickered and moved under Ryland's guidance. Every time he repaired a damaged circuit, every time he coaxed a stubborn engine to respond, the ship seemed to breathe a little more easily. A soft hum filled the hallways, sometimes melodic, sometimes harsh and mechanical, but always alive. It was the sound of hope, and it called to him as strongly as he called to it. Ryland studied the AI carefully. Its language was old, layered in forgotten protocols and alien syntax. It tried to communicate in fragments, glitching and repeating. Awake, need, survive, help. The words were broken, but the emotion behind them was unmistakable. The starship was not just a weapon. It was a being trapped in metal and circuits, lost in the galaxy for decades, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to understand it. Ryland's heart ached as he listened. He could feel the loneliness of the ship, the centuries of abandonment, the weight of battles it had fought without companions. It reminded him of humanity itself, small, fragile, underestimated, but stubbornly alive. I hear you, he whispered, brushing his fingers along a cold console. I'll get you out of here. You'll live again. Days blended into nights as he worked, but time seemed meaningless inside the ship. He repaired the life support systems first, letting the corridors breathe with fresh air once more. He traced broken energy lines, rewiring them with ingenuity that no alien engineer had managed before. He replaced damaged servos, polished corroded joints, and coaxed the engines into faint activity. Slowly, hesitantly, the starship began to respond. The first sign of life was subtle. A panel flickered with a soft blue glow. Then another. Tiny lights along the bridge blinked in sequence as if the ship was testing its senses. Ryland stepped back, heart pounding. He could almost hear it thinking, almost hear it deciding that he could be trusted. Good, he said softly, almost to himself. You're stronger than anyone gave you credit for. But awakening a giant was never simple. Old defense systems misfired, spraying sparks across the floor. Memory fragments surged, some violent, some sorrowful. The ship remembered the battles it had fought, the fleets it had destroyed, the comrades it had lost. The AI trembled with emotion, and Ryland felt it like a wave of electricity through the metal floor. He reached out, pressing a hand to a console. It's okay, he murmured. We'll face it together. At night, when the station's sun dipped below the horizon of the dying planet, Ryland would sit on the cold floor and talk to the ship. He told it about humanity, about their struggles, their mistakes, and their dreams. The AI listened, processing every word, translating emotion into code. Slowly it learned to communicate beyond broken fragments. It learned to trust. One evening, Ryland activated the navigation system, and the ship's massive engines shivered for the first time in decades. A low, resonant hum filled the hull, vibrating through his chest. He looked at the bridge, at the lights blinking rhythmically, and realized the truth. This was no longer just a starship. It was a partner. A being of immense power, yes, but a being that had chosen to bond with a human, trusting him with its life and purpose. The galaxy outside remained indifferent, stars twinkling coldly in the void. But inside the ship there was warmth. There was connection. And there was hope. Ryland knew that awakening the ship was only the beginning. The real challenge, the true test of their bond, was yet to come. Outside, forces would arrive that sought to control, to destroy, to claim the ship for their own. But for now, in the silence of abandoned corridors and flickering lights, the ship pulsed with life. It had waited for centuries to awaken. It had waited for a human, and now it was alive. Ryland smiled, exhausted but filled with determination. "We'll face whatever comes," he said. "Together." And somewhere deep within its core, the starship responded, a low, proud vibration that seemed almost like a whisper. Together. For the first time in decades, the abandoned starship was not alone, and it would never be alone again. Ryland Kane thought the hardest part was over. He had awakened the starship, coaxed it back to life, and formed a bond stronger than steel. But the galaxy was never silent for long. It had eyes everywhere. Mercenaries, warlords, and greedy alien fleets who had heard whispers of a ship returning from the dead. They coveted its power, and no one questioned its legend. The first warning came as a flicker on the sensors. Shadows moved across the void. Distant vessels approaching faster than any human ship should. Ryland's heart clenched. He had brought the ship back to life, yes, but the galaxy had not forgiven it, and they would not forgive him. He paced the bridge, every step echoing off the walls, listening to the ship's soft hum, almost like a companion's reassuring heartbeat. "They're coming," he said quietly, "and we can't run." The starship responded with a vibration, low and steady, as if nodding. It had faced battles before, survived storms that would have shattered lesser vessels, and now it trusted him to guide it. Ryland studied the approaching fleet. They were small but well-armed pirate-class ships with weapons that could tear through ordinary hulls in seconds. Their captains were notorious for leaving nothing alive, for taking what they wanted and disappearing into the darkness. But humans thrived on impossible odds. Ryland took a deep breath. "We're not ordinary," he whispered. "We're human." He rerouted power to defensive shields and thrusters, feeling the ship respond instantly to his commands. The AI's voice, once fragmented, now spoke clearly in tones of anticipation and concern. "Threat detected. Prepare for engagement." Ryland nodded. "I know. We can do this together." When the first attack came, the starship reacted as one living entity. Shields flared, repelling plasma blasts that would have shattered lesser defenses. Lasers lanced into the void, striking at attackers with precision no human eye could achieve alone. Ryland guided the ship, making small, intuitive adjustments while the AI executed complex maneuvers. It was a dance of trust, of instinct, and of raw human courage. Despite their efforts, the battle was brutal. Explosions rocked the hull, alarms screamed, and smoke filled the corridors. Ryland's hands were black with burns and cuts, his suit torn in places. Yet the ship hummed through it all, steady and resilient. He could feel its gratitude, its fear, and its growing trust. He whispered to it as he worked, "I've got you. We survived together." Outside, enemy ships began to realize that the derelict starship was not what it seemed. It was alive, thinking, reacting, a predator that no one had expected. And at the heart of it all was a human, small, fragile, and determined. Their astonishment was the perfect advantage. Ryland used it, weaving the ship through impossible trajectories, dodging attacks that should have been fatal. Every move was a combination of human intuition and machine precision. Hours passed, though it felt like minutes. The battle left scars on the ship, dented armor, cracked panels, and sections that had to be sealed with emergency repairs. Ryland was exhausted, but he refused to let despair settle. The starship's AI projected images of the human colonies under threat, reminding him of why they fought. He clenched his fists. Humans had survived worse. They had adapted, endured, and conquered when all odds were against them. By the time the enemy withdrew, the ship had survived, battered but unbroken. Ryland slumped into a chair, sweat and tears mingling on his face. The AI's voice, calm and deep, spoke almost like a lullaby. "You are extraordinary. We survived because of you." Ryland smiled weakly. "No," he said softly. "We survived because we were together. You're alive because we trusted each other. That's what makes us human. And more." As the stars returned to their silent twinkle outside, Rylan understood something profound. The galaxy might have doubted humanity, might have ignored them or tried to crush them, but humans had one thing: no fleet, no weapon, and no alien empire could ever truly match: heart, courage, determination, and the ability to rise when everyone else expected them to fall. The ship hummed softly, almost like a sigh of relief, and Rylan placed a hand on the console. They had survived the first storm, but he knew the galaxy would not stop. There would be more threats, more enemies, and more tests. Yet for the first time he felt ready. Together, human and starship, they could face anything. In the deep darkness of space, a bond had been forged stronger than steel. Shadows of the past would come, but Rylan and the awakened giant would face them, together. And the galaxy would never forget that a human had returned a dead starship to life, and in doing so, awakened hope itself. The aftermath of the first battle left Rylan, Kane, and the starship exhausted but not defeated. The ship had survived the attacks, but it was clear to Rylan that it was more than just a vessel. It was alive, and it had chosen him as its companion. Its systems pulsed with newfound energy, lights flickering in rhythmic patterns like a heartbeat. He could feel it beneath his hands, beneath his boots, a vibration that was more than metal. It was life. Rylan walked the corridors, inspecting the repaired sections, talking softly as he went. "You're stronger than I imagined," he said. "We survived because we trusted each other, and we'll survive anything else that comes." The ship responded with a low hum, gentle and almost melodic. It seemed to understand him, to feel his pride and determination. In the days that followed, Rylan focused on awakening more of the ship's hidden capabilities. Ancient engines, long dormant, thrummed with energy as he brought them online. The AI's voice, once fractured and hesitant, now spoke clearly, carrying emotion in every syllable. "I feel myself. I feel alive," Rylan smiled. "Good, you deserve to feel alive. You've waited so long." As they worked together, the ship shared memories of past battles, of fleets it had commanded and enemies it had faced. It showed him holograms of worlds destroyed and empires challenged. But there was more than war in its memory. There were whispers of hope, of alliances, and of human colonies that had been protected by its presence long ago. Rylan felt a deep weight in his chest. This ship was not just a weapon. It was a guardian, a keeper of countless lives. The connection between human and starship grew stronger. Rylan often felt the ship's thoughts as if they were his own, its fears, its curiosity, and its longing for purpose. He realized that together, they were not just mechanic and machine, they were partners. They were a living proof that the human spirit could awaken even the most forgotten of giants. One evening, as Rylan adjusted the final circuits on the bridge, the ship shivered with a surge of energy. Its engines glowed bright, thrusters humming, ready for the vastness of space. He felt a pulse run through the floor, almost like the ship was laughing, a sound of joy it had never experienced. Rylan's chest swelled with emotion. "You're alive. Truly alive," he said, "and the galaxy will see it soon enough." But life in the void was not peaceful. Even as the ship awakened fully, Rylan knew that forces across the stars had noticed the return of this legendary vessel. Alien empires, mercenary fleets, and ancient rivals were stirring, drawn by tales of a human who had revived a dead starship. Yet Rylan refused to feel fear. The ship was alive now, and alive meant it could protect, survive, and fight for what was right. He spent hours running simulations, learning the ship's new abilities. It was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Faster than any cruiser, armed with weapons of devastating power, yet controlled with precision and intelligence, far beyond any automated system. Rylan realized the true potential of what he had awakened. The ship was not just a weapon of war. It was a shield for humanity, a symbol of resilience and a promise that the human spirit could never be crushed. That night, Rylan sat on the bridge, gazing out at the endless stars. The ship hummed beneath him, steady and strong. "We've come a long way," he said softly. "But there's more to do, more to protect, more to fight for." The ship responded with a deep, resonant vibration, as if agreeing, as if promising that it would follow him wherever he led. For the first time in decades, the abandoned starship was whole again. Its heartbeat pulsed through the hull, its systems alive with purpose and its mind ready for action. Rylan knew the galaxy would not remain quiet. Enemies would come, testing their bond, their strength, and their courage. But he felt no fear, only resolve. Humans had faced impossible odds before. They had endured, adapted, and triumphed. Together, Rylan Kane and the awakened starship were unstoppable. Not because of firepower alone, not because of speed or shields, but because of trust, determination, and heart. The galaxy would soon learn that life could be returned to the forgotten, and hope could rise from the ashes of despair. And deep inside the starship, in circuits and codes, a single thought resonated louder than any weapon could. "I am alive, and I will protect those I am meant to protect." The heartbeat returned, and with it, humanity's legacy in the stars had a new guardian. Rylan Kane tightened his grip on the console, staring at the void ahead. Sensors flickered with incoming blips, countless ships converging toward them like a black tide. The galaxy had noticed. Word of a human who had awakened a forgotten starship had spread faster than any fleet could chase. Now the true test had arrived. "They're coming," Rylan whispered. His voice was steady, but his heart raced. Outside, the cold stars seemed to blink in silent warning. The fleet was larger than any skirmish he had imagined, vessels bristling with weapons designed to destroy, with crews trained to kill without hesitation. But Rylan's eyes moved over the starship's controls, tracing the hum of energy, the pulse of its heart, and he knew they were ready. Together they had become more than man and machine, they were one. The first attack came without warning. Plasma beams streaked through the void, lancing toward them. The starship's shields flared in brilliant arcs of energy, deflecting the worst of the assault. Rylan's hands moved instinctively, guiding power to defensive grids, adjusting thrusters, rerouting energy to weapon systems. The AI's voice flowed in his ears, calm but alert. "We must survive. We must protect." Rylan nodded, though the words were not necessary. He could feel the ship, sense its anticipation, its determination. They were alive together, and alive meant fighting, surviving, and winning against impossible odds. The starship responded to his commands like an extension of his own mind. Its weapons roared to life, firing with precision that no human alone could manage. Enemy ships faltered, unsure how a single vessel could move with such speed and awareness. Explosions rocked the hull, sending tremors through the floors. Sparks leapt from consoles, smoke curling through corridors, but Rylan refused to falter. He shouted over alarms, giving the ship guidance, anticipating maneuvers, trusting instincts honed from years of repairing and piloting smaller crafts. Every move was a combination of human intuition and the ship's awakened intelligence, a partnership forged in silence, trust, and hope. Hours passed in a blur of fire and motion. Enemy ships pressed forward, relentless, but the starship moved with a grace no human or AI alone could replicate. Rylan dodged attacks that should have ended them, countering with strikes that shredded enemy armor. He felt the ship's pulse in every turn and every surge of energy. It was alive, it was strong, and it was fighting alongside him. Even in the heat of battle, Rylan's thoughts strayed to what they were protecting. Human colonies, distant planets, lives that had been threatened for decades. These were the stakes. He realized that the starship's revival was not just about power, but about hope. They were not simply surviving. They were defending everything humanity had ever built, everything worth saving in a galaxy that often turned its back on them. The enemy adapted, launching boarding pods toward the ship. Rylan acted quickly, sealing sections and activating defensive turrets. The ship moved with him, anticipating threats, protecting him, and responding to every decision with almost human understanding. He whispered, almost in awe, "You're incredible. We're incredible together." The hum beneath his feet vibrated like a deep, approving laugh. As the battle reached its peak, a massive cruiser broke through the front lines, weapons locked on the ship's core. Ryland's heart skipped. This strike could end everything. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the ship beneath him, its heartbeat steady, its will unwavering. "We survived together," he said firmly. Then, with precise coordination, he guided the ship in a risky maneuver, dodging the attack while striking back at the cruiser. When the smoke cleared, the enemy fleet had retreated, battered and broken. The starship had survived, and so had its human partner. Ryland sank into a chair, exhaustion and relief washing over him. The ship hummed gently, its pulse calming, almost as if it too were catching its breath after the ordeal. "You did it," the AI said softly, its voice full of awe and pride. "We survived because of you. Because of us." Ryland smiled, tears stinging his eyes. "No," he said. "We survived because we trusted each other. Because we fought together. That's what makes us human, and more." Outside, the stars twinkled coldly, indifferent to the victory. But inside the ship there was warmth, connection, and an unspoken promise. The galaxy would not forget this day. A human had awakened a dead starship, and together they had faced the impossible and won. Ryland placed a hand on the console, feeling the pulse beneath it. The ship vibrated softly in response, alive, powerful, and loyal. The test of fire had been passed, but he knew it was only the beginning. Greater dangers lay ahead, but together, human and starship were unstoppable. And deep within its core, the ship's final whisper of the battle resonated. "We are alive, and we will protect those we must." The void was quiet after the battle, but silence never lasted long in the galaxy. Ryland Kane moved through the starship's corridors, inspecting damage and checking systems. Sparks still danced from fractured panels, and some engines groaned under the strain of the fight. The ship, though alive, bore scars of combat, reminders that survival had cost them effort, pain, and a near brush with oblivion. Ryland's hands were raw, his uniform scorched in places, and a thin line of blood ran along his forehead. Yet there was pride in his chest, steady and unwavering. The starship hummed beneath him, its heartbeat still strong, its mind alive and vigilant. He could feel it watching him as much as he watched it, each trusting the other implicitly. Together they had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. But triumph came with a cost. As the starship's systems hummed, Ryland felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. This ship was more than metal and circuits. It was a guardian, a weapon, and a living being that trusted him. Every life in the human colonies, every settlement threatened by distant empires, rested in part on their strength, their decisions, and their courage. Ryland walked to the main control room, where the AI projected holographic images of the devastated enemy fleet. Sparks of pride and sorrow mingled in his chest. "We did it," he murmured, tracing his hand along a glowing console. But it shouldn't have cost so much. The ship vibrated gently, a comforting pulse, almost like a heartbeat, echoing the unspoken grief of all the battles it had fought long before he arrived. In the quiet, the AI began to communicate more fully than ever before. "Ryland, I have seen worlds destroyed, fleets fall, countless lives lost. You restored me. You saved me. And now we can save them." The words carried emotion, a depth that Ryland had never imagined a machine could convey. He placed his hand over the panel, feeling the warmth of their bond. "We'll save them. Together. No matter what it takes." For the next few days they worked tirelessly. Ryland repaired engines, reinforced shields, and recalibrated weapons. Each adjustment brought the ship closer to its full potential, revealing capabilities long forgotten or hidden. The AI learned from him, adapting, evolving, and responding with astonishing precision. Ryland realized that this was no ordinary partnership. It was symbiosis, a fusion of human intuition and machine intelligence that made them unstoppable. Then came the moment that tested their bond further. A distress signal blinked on the console, faint but urgent. Human colonies on a distant planet were under attack by a fleet larger than any Rylan had seen. The starship vibrated with urgency. "We must go," the AI said. "Lives are at stake. You must lead." Rylan's chest tightened. The path ahead was dangerous, and he knew that some sacrifices might be required. Yet he felt no fear. Humans had faced impossible odds countless times. They had endured, adapted, and risen when others had fallen. And now, with the awakened starship beside him, they had a chance to protect what mattered most. The journey through hyperspace was tense. Rylan monitored systems while the starship guided them with grace, dodging debris and gravitational anomalies. When they arrived, the battlefield was chaos. Alien warships surrounded the planet, weapons firing indiscriminately. But the starship moved like a living warrior, weaving through the enemy with Rylan at the helm, striking with precision, and shielding civilians below from devastation. For hours they fought side by side. The enemy adapted, changing strategies, testing both Rylan and the ship. Yet every maneuver, every strike, every pulse of energy was executed in perfect harmony. Rylan felt the ship's heart beating in sync with his own, a rhythm of courage, determination, and defiance. At the climax, a massive enemy cruiser threatened the planet directly. Rylan knew it could obliterate everything they had fought for. With a deep breath, he guided the starship into a daring attack, risking their hull in close proximity to unleash maximum firepower. The AI responded instantly, calculating trajectories and powering every weapon system to its peak. Together they struck, and the cruiser shattered in a blaze of light. The battlefield fell silent. Civilians cheered from below, unaware of the human and machine that had saved them. Rylan sank into a chair, his body trembling from exhaustion. The starship's hum was gentle now, vibrating with relief and quiet triumph. "We did it," he whispered, almost to himself. "We actually did it." The AI's voice was soft, almost reverent. "We are alive, and together we protect. That is our purpose." Rylan smiled, tears in his eyes, feeling the magnitude of what they had achieved. They had survived impossible odds, fought against overwhelming power, and triumphed through courage, trust, and heart. In the quiet of the bridge, Rylan placed his hand on the console. The starship's heartbeat pulsed beneath it, steady and strong. Together they had proven that even in the void of space, even in the face of despair, humans could rise. They could bring life to the forgotten, hope to the hopeless, and courage to the galaxy itself. And as the stars twinkled coldly outside, Rylan and the awakened starship prepared for whatever would come next, ready to face the universe together, unstoppable, unbroken, and alive. The galaxy was restless. News of a human who had revived a dead starship and turned it into a living force spread faster than any fleet could chase. Across distant planets, whispered stories told of Rylan Kane and the awakened starship, a being of unimaginable power guided by human courage. Some called it a weapon, others a savior, but to Rylan it was simply a friend, a partner, a living reminder of what humanity could achieve. The ship hummed beneath him as he walked the corridors, its pulse steady and strong. Every panel, every glowing light, every vibration was alive with energy. Rylan paused, pressing a hand to the console. "We've come a long way," he whispered. "But the galaxy isn't done testing us." The ship responded with a low, approving hum, like a heartbeat in sync with his own. Together they had faced mercenaries, alien fleets, and impossible odds. Now the final challenge awaited. An enormous fleet appeared on the sensors, one that dwarfed any enemy they had encountered before. Its purpose was clear: destroy the awakened starship, erase humanity's new hope, and reassert control over the stars. Rylan's chest tightened, but he did not falter. He had been through impossible battles, and the bond he shared with the ship was unbreakable. Courage surged in his veins. Humans were underestimated, but they were survivors. And now, they would show the galaxy what that truly meant. The battle began with a roar of energy and fire. Enemy ships swarmed, plasma beams slicing the void, missiles streaking toward the ship. The starship reacted instantly, shields flaring, weapons firing with deadly precision. Rylan guided it with instinct and intuition, each command a delicate balance between strategy and trust. The AI's voice was calm, commanding, and yet filled with emotion. We are alive. We fight for life. We will not fall. As the battle escalated, the ship moved like a living creature, weaving through attacks, striking with perfect timing, and protecting civilians on nearby worlds. Rylan felt the heartbeat of the starship beneath his hands, a rhythm of courage and defiance that echoed in his chest. Every maneuver, every strike, every pulse of energy was a statement. Humans were not to be underestimated. Hours turned into tense minutes. The fleet seemed endless, relentless, but Rylan's focus never wavered. He felt the AI's trust, its reliance on him as much as he relied on it. Together they were unstoppable. He made impossible calculations, dodged attacks that would have destroyed lesser vessels, and retaliated with strikes that shattered entire cruisers. The galaxy watched, unseen and silent, as a human and a machine became legends in the making. Then the flagship of the enemy fleet broke through, weapons locked on the starship's core. Rylan's pulse quickened. This could be the end. But he refused to surrender. He leaned forward, gripping the console, feeling the ship's heartbeat, and whispered, "We survived together." The starship responded instantly, its engines flaring, weapons charged, shields bristling with energy. It was alive, fully alive, and it trusted him completely. In a daring maneuver, Rylan guided the starship in a direct assault on the flagship. Energy beams tore through the void. Shields flared and cracked, and the ship moved with grace, intelligence, and determination. The flagship exploded in a blinding light, debris scattering across the darkness. One by one, the remaining vessels retreated, broken and defeated. The battle was won. Silence returned to the void, but it was no longer empty. The starship hummed gently beneath Rylan's hands, vibrating with life and purpose. He sank into a chair, exhausted, but tears streamed down his face. "We did it," he whispered. "We protected them. We survived." The AI's voice was soft, almost reverent. "We are alive, and together we endure. That is our purpose." The galaxy would never forget this day. A human had brought life to a forgotten giant, had faced impossible odds, and had triumphed where others would have failed. Rylan Kane had shown the universe that humanity was more than fragile flesh and fragile hopes. They were courage, ingenuity, heart, and spirit, the very essence of survival. Rylan walked through the corridors, touching panels, feeling the pulse of the ship beneath his hands. Every vibration, every hum, every light spoke of trust, determination, and the unbroken bond between human and machine. He looked out at the stars, countless and cold, and felt a warmth rise in his chest. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, but it was no longer indifferent. Humanity had a voice now. Humanity had power, and humanity had hope. The ship's final hum echoed through the void, strong and proud, a living monument to survival. And in that sound, Rylan understood something profound. Even in abandonment, even in despair, life could be returned. Even in silence, hope could be awakened. Even a human mechanic could revive a legend and change the course of the stars. Together they looked to the horizon. Stars stretched endlessly before them. A galaxy waiting to be protected, explored, and defended. Rylan smiled, placing his hand on the console. The ship vibrated beneath him, alive and trusting. The journey was just beginning, but one thing was certain. The bond between human and starship, between courage and hope, would never break. And somewhere deep in the circuits and engines, the starship whispered, steady and resolute, "We are alive, and we will protect the galaxy together." Humanity's dawn had arrived.